Shalom and welcome to It's All About the Aliyah. I hope you're enjoying our new format. We once again want to thank Israel TV Network for providing this beautiful studio. You know, we had a guest on not long ago, Nosson Shulman, and I don't know why. I have to apologize to him why I keep stumbling on that name, but he was great. I think he's going to be a new friend of this program. He's an Israeli tour guide. And I loved the program so much, I wanted to bring him back. He's with us again today. Nosson, welcome.
Thank you for having me again. I had a great time the first time around, and I'm very excited to be back.
Good. It's good to have you back. And I apologize. I don't know why when I say Nosson Shulman, it doesn't want to roll off my tongue, but it's a very easy name. And
most people are like that. With Israelis too. My name is actually, another way you can call it is Natan, right? Nosson is the more Ashkenazi way of saying Natan, or as in the Hebrew version of Nathan. Right. So, you're in good company because few people get my name right the first time.
Okay. I think it doesn't seem like it's a difficult name to say, but it keeps twisting my tongue when I get to your last name. But Natan, that's I like that. Is the Hebrew version of that. So we talked a lot last time you were on the program about your personal journey. You made Aliyah from Canada. You're currently living in Beit Shemesh, and you now travel the country, and you see a lot of Israelis who have come from someplace else, right? I mean, the United States is a melting pot. Israel is definitely a melting pot because of the rebirth and regathering from the four corners of the earth. I'd love for you to address that, maybe in some of your observations about how people respond and react and adapt, from coming from the four corners of the earth. Can you address that for me?
Absolutely. And yes, Israel is a melting pot. It's a specific it's a Jewish melting pot, which means that it has its own flavor that's unique to this country versus other countries. But the Israeli experience is very, depending on where you come from, is in terms of adapting, it could be very different. So, for example, Americans, and by the way, in Israel, when Canadians or Brits or Americans, they say American, they really mean Anglos. So Anglos, they come in and they have a harder time than usual to learn the language. Mm. They are more likely to stay in more American communities, so it's harder for them to, and also because today you can technically, it's very difficult, but there are jobs that you can do here in Israel, American hours that are only in English. So it's somewhat easier to be American here and not learn Hebrew. But let's say the Russians that came en masse in the 90s, and they learned Hebrew almost instantly. Mm. Possibly because Russian isn't as strong of a language in the world economy as English is. But they've adapted very well. I could tell by their accents more if they're Russian or not, but most outsiders wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Same with the Ethiopians. The Ethiopians came in and they've adapted with the language as well. Yeah. And so every group that comes has had their own challenges, but they've also had their own ways of contributing to what we call today Israel.
Right. Well, you know the old saying, Nosson, that if you're trilingual, you know three languages, bilingual, you know two, and if you know one, you're an American.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I think that is an issue that we have to overcome. But believe me, if I were able to make Aliyah, I'd want to learn Hebrew. I wish I had done it all these years that I've been visiting.
But it's a relatively easy language to learn. In fact, English, for those who don't speak English is probably the hardest language to learn. Not so many rules, a lot of words. In Hebrew, if you know the grammar, just the grammar, that's half the battle. So Hebrew is a relatively easy language for non-Hebrew speakers to learn.
Yeah. I noticed when I come, different cities seem to have a different flavor, different languages are prevalent. In fact, we stayed in Netanya a couple of times during our trips to do some interviews. And my friend and colleague, who's from Ukraine, had a very easy time talking to most people because so many people spoke Russian. Of course, there are a lot of French,
Netanya, exactly. The French speakers, in general, the French that come, France has the third largest Jewish population in the world outside of Israel and the U.S. And there's a lot of anti-Semitism. So the French, they come to Israel and they like to live around the beach. So you'll see them more in places like Netanya or Hadera or Tel Aviv, anywhere near the coast. They tend to enjoy that area.
Yeah, I noticed that. And you mentioned France, and we mentioned a little bit in our first episode together about anti-Semitism being a driving force. Sadly, France falls in that category where you had a Jewish population with affluence and influence, but couldn't walk down the streets with a kippah on. And that dynamic caused a number of people to make Aliyah in the last few years.
I can attest to that. I studied when I was in university. I did a summer semester in France, and I wouldn't wear. I wore a baseball cap because I knew that to not do so would be dangerous. And this was even in Jewish neighborhoods. So it's gone very bad in France. Interestingly enough, if I go to Dubai now, I would dress the way I'm dressed in front of you now. But in France, no, that wouldn't happen today.
Isn't that incredible? I mean, who would have thought that a number of years ago? But you're the first person that actually has face to face that has told me that's an experience. I've read about that where Jewish people have had to wear baseball caps or not wear a kippah at all. And here you can testify to that very fact.
Absolutely.
That's very, very sad when you think about France and how that's supposed to be a free, modern country, to think that is going on. But let's hope in our second segment we can talk a little bit more about the positive things regarding Aliyah. Sadly, that reality that exists in France exists in many countries. But we're going to take a break here, and we'll come back and talk some more about this melting pot that is Israel.
What if Abram didn't leave Ur of the Chaldees when God called him? What if Moses refused to go to the Pharaoh asking for Pharaoh to let his people go? What if Joshua had not led the children of Israel into the promised land? What if Cyrus did not issue his decree? What if Esther did not use her position with the king for such a time? What if Daniel did not pray in Daniel 9? What if Nehemiah did not rebuild the walls of Jerusalem? What if we don't respond to God's call to the Gentiles? You can be a part of God's prophecy being fulfilled today. Stand with Ezra International today, before it's too late.
Okay, welcome back. We are talking to Nosson Shulman. He is an Israeli tour guide, and we're talking about adapting to Israel life, having come from different nations. Nosson, why don't you continue? Tell us about your observations as you travel around Israel and you see people who have come from all over the world, really. How they adapt, maybe how they bring their culture with them. Let's share a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I enjoy most about living in Israel, is meeting people from different communities and hearing the stories of how their parents, either they came, or if certain like the Yemenite Jews, the Jews that Yemen has one of the oldest Jewish communities. I think actually officially it just ended like a couple of weeks ago. One of my best friends, he's also my driver. He's very proud of his culture. So anytime we have a free moment, I like to learn about his Yemenite heritage. Most of them came in the 50s, but so they're Israeli in every sense of the word, but they still retain their Yemenite customs. They're Israeli, but with their own flavor. And of course, it comes with the good food. One thing that I've noticed also about Yemenite Jews or Sephardi Jews, a guy like me that I can't have spicy foods, but my driver or my friends, they'll eat. I see them eating hot peppers at the meals we have together, like their dessert. So
Oh,
I always find that very interesting, and that's one of the reasons why Israel's such a culinary paradise is because people bring their dishes from Russia, they bring them from Hungary, they bring them from Ethiopia, from Argentina, and they all come and they in some way they mesh together. In some ways, their Argentinian dishes become Israeli Argentinian dishes, right? Its own flavor, and it's just I mean that's one of the great experiences of living in Israel, where a guy like me, like I'm Canadian, but I'm also, but I'm an Israeli. But it doesn't take away from the fact that I'm, either Canadian or he's Yemenite. So in Israel, it's possible to be both, and they're not a contradiction.
no, it's not a contradiction. It's definitely a benefit to all of you. And I tell you, I have never gone hungry in Israel. I've always enjoyed the food, and that's I'm sure a product of so many cultures coming in and bringing their recipes with them.
Interesting fact is the BBC last year rated Tel Aviv the 9th best culinary city in the world.
Really, that I didn't know that. That's I can see why. I mean, again, it's such a part too, I think, of the culture as far as socializing over food. Is it not? I mean, isn't that would you not connect that all the way back to Abraham also, the idea of hospitality and sitting and having food together?
Absolutely. It's I mean, eating. I mean, the Jewish people in general, we like food.
Yeah.
But we like to, and we're very hospitable. I noticed that also that when in Israel, something that's very foreign to, let's say, the United States. If I'm walking down New York City, I'm walking down Fifth Avenue in Manhattan, or someone says, "You want to come to my house?" Some stranger, I'll say, why are you asking? Seems like a weird thing. In Israel, that's a normal question. I remember once I had a tourist that came to me, and she went to the washroom and she said to me, something weird just happened. Someone came and asked me to use my cell phone. I thought that was very creepy. I said, no, in Israel, it's normal. You can if you don't have a phone, you need to make a call. You just ask some stranger and he gives it to you. So it's a very trusting society. It's a very open, and it's something that's you become best friends very quickly in Israel.
Yeah, I've made that observation. There's a dynamic there that, for example, walking the streets late at night. I've been there, visited with my wife, and walked the streets of Jerusalem or other cities up until 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And I probably wouldn't do that in many of the cities here locally, but I felt completely safe. And I think there's that dynamic that people don't understand, that the threats to Israel are from the outside, but internally it's a very tight-knit group of people, and maybe that's the existential threat that always exists, but I think it's more than that. I think there's a bond that goes beyond.
And also, I mean, Israel, I remember when I first came here, especially before I was a parent, I observed, like, there's no parental support. Like, where are the parents? I see kids at the park. I mean, of course, the parents are nearby and watching, but like growing up, my mother wouldn't let me out of her sight. Here in Israel, it's much safer, and now we let our kids also have freedom. Of course, we give them rules of where they can or cannot go, and we make sure we can see them and stuff. But kids are more independent here. It happens to be that way here, that it's normal for the 10-year-old to take the 7-year-old out for and the 7-year-old to watch over the 6-year-old. It's and in some countries it wouldn't work, but in Israel it works very well.
Yeah, it does. I see that. I see that there's a fountain outside the city walls there in Jerusalem. I see kids all hours playing in the evening and or during the day. There's the streets running. I mentioned to some of our tour one time, the prophecy of Zechariah that talks about the children playing in the streets again. And just as I was saying that, a young boy weaved his way through the crowd, right through us on his bike. And it's interesting here, we are talking about fulfilling prophecy, and in his mind, it's his backyard, it's his playground, so it's where the miraculous meets the mundane, is what I like to say.
Absolutely, and it's great to be able to, for the kids to have that kind of independence. They're happier here. And you mentioned about Israel's challenge, being a tight-knit community with the outside threats. Despite the outside threats, studies show that Israelis are amongst the most happy people in the world statistically. It's a great place to live, even with and when you talk, it's funny when you talk, Israel's a much easier place to live today than it was, in the 70s or 80s when the country was just starting up, or the 50s, 60s, and 70s. But, you talk to Israelis from that time with all the hardships that existed in Israel, when they were in the army and stuff, they talk about how fun it was, how great it was. And it was, and it's hard for not, and when they were in the army in battle, and and he says, one guy says in battle, he turned to his friend and he says, made a joke and stuff. And I couldn't understand that as an American, but in Israel, it's a very happy place.
That's good. That is so good to hear. Well, we're up against another break. We're going to pause here for a moment. When we come back, maybe we'll talk a little bit about how the influx from other countries has affected the culture. And maybe I'll share a comment that I've heard, and maybe you could address it as well. I'll talk to you about that after the break. All right, we'll be right back.
Do you want to know what everybody's talking about? Ezra International has their own TV network broadcasting 24 hours a day on Rumble. It's amazing. You can watch great programming dedicated to the return of the Jewish people after 2,000 years back to their homeland of Israel. The network just started and new shows are being added, so check back often. You can see what's new by going to EzraInternational.org and click on the live stream button today.
Okay, we're back. We're still talking with Nosson Shulman. And Nosson, we're talking about culture. We're talking about Israel being, you just mentioned, a very happy place to live, and that Israelis are happy. I have a sister-in-law who has never been to Israel and has twice said to me, even above my protest, that Israel is a desert. And I've been up and down through the country, and there's so much more than that to Israel from a climate standpoint, from a topography standpoint. And before we go back and talk about the cultural issues, could you address that for our audience?
Israel is a country there are 46 states in the United States that are bigger than Israel. It's a very small country, and we have almost every climate you can think of. In the same day that you go skiing on the mountains of Hermon in the north, that's in the morning. In the afternoon, you can go and swim in the Sea of Galilee. Same day. One in the morning, you needed a jacket. In the afternoon, you needed a bathing suit. Israel is definitely very green. Israel has the only country to have more trees now than it had 50 years ago. Israel has one of the world's only shrinking deserts. So we do have a desert. But it's shrinking. And one thing that my tourists have noticed when they come here, they're all like, wow, I didn't expect it to be so green.
Yeah.
I expected it to be desert. So you do have desert, but it's also a lot of plants and flowers and greenery.
Yeah, it is a beautiful country. And I thank you for addressing that. That was a personal one that I wanted you to address. But why don't we talk a little bit about how the culture has changed in Israel over the last 70 years or so, because of such an influx of people from other nations?
Well, there's one word, I'm going to teach you a Hebrew word that strikes fear in the heart of Israelis, and that's called, and I'm sure you'll be able to understand the word, bureaucratia. Bureaucracy. So Israel had a reputation for many, many years, not necessarily unfounded, but a reputation as being a place with bad customer service. My father told me a joke once. He says he was on an El Al flight, and they said, would you like breakfast, sir? And he said, what are the choices? They said, yes or no. So it's with one thing that Americans have brought with them is American-style customer service. So today Israelis don't recognize the customer service that they had back in the 70s and 80s, because today it's much much better. And it's only as the years go on, it gets easier. Less bureaucracy, better service, prices go down a little bit. Sometimes they go up, but it gets easier.
That's
and
good.
That's thanks to the immigrants that bring some of their good qualities with them from the countries they come with.
That's good to hear. Now, that's funny you did say that, because as I've been coming or traveling to Israel for so many years, that I did hear some of those stories and experience that. I think I laugh at times when I watch our tour groups wait in line and then see Israelis just, zipping past them because they don't wait in line. Is that still the case? And I mean, I laugh about it, but
there's something to it, and Israelis like to laugh about it too. It's one of those funny things. I think it's gone better in that regard, and I don't feel that people are so pushy anymore. But more so, but if you're coming from a country like Germany, where things are done, on clockwork, then yeah, definitely.
Yeah. You definitely have influence from all over the world, and one of the things that Israel excels at that we haven't addressed yet is in high tech and in startups. Not long ago, I read the book Startup Nation.
That's a great book.
With Israel, being the number one per capita and only second to the United States in real numbers in startups. So obviously, incredibly, a thriving nation, and incredibly ambitious, and such an advantage to the world in so many ways.
And one of the reasons is that, as you mentioned before about the outside threats, most Israelis, by law, Israelis are drafted into the army. So these are kids that are 18, 19. They're using technology that we can't even imagine because it's probably classified. But technology, they're exposed to technology at such a young age. And then once they leave the army after 3 years, they go and they bring it into those concepts into the marketplace, and they've done extremely well. Also, there's just something about Israelis that, being closed in from the countries around us, it kind of makes you tougher. You have to come up with solutions. And those are two things that have definitely driven the Israeli economy, high tech, and made it a vital asset to the world.
That you bring up a good point. The very thing that was intended to hurt Israel by isolating them, and the boycotts, divestment, sanctions, things of that nature, has actually, I think, helped motivate you to become more independent, more creative, and more self-sufficient. Would that be the case?
Absolutely. The irony is that many people that are anti-Israel don't realize that most of the technology they're using has some component of Israel in it. If had they known it, I'm sure they would still, they might still be anti-Israel, but I mean, they couldn't live without these products, because Israel's high tech, the technology they brought to the world, is just so intertwined with our 21st century.
That's right. I've actually seen that argument. Maybe it was in form of social media memes. But you'd have to give up your cell phone, give up most of the things that you use today as modern conveniences, if you were to truly boycott all of Israeli products.
Absolutely, it would be like going back to the Stone Age.
Yeah. One of the things too that the idea of boycotting businesses in Judea and Samaria. Isn't it true that when that happens, Arab population is hurt because they employ so many Arabs in that region, right?
I'm glad you brought that up, because absolutely, the people that are boycotting Israel, first of all, it has to be known that they are not pro-Palestinian. They're just anti-Israel. The people that they hurt the most are the Palestinians. Mm-hmm. I'll give you an example. One of the third largest Jewish city in Judah and Samaria is called Ma'ale Adumim, just outside of Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. They had a very well-known company that you may have heard of called SodaStream.
Yes.
Very successful company. And of the 1,200 employees that worked in the factory, half of them, 600 of them, were Palestinian. And the Palestinians that worked there, right, they had different, just like the Jews, they had different jobs. Some of them were managers, some of them were more blue collar, some of them were janitorial, But even those that were making minimum wage, the minimum wage in Israel is about 3 times the salary that they would be making working for a Palestinian employer. Plus, they get vacation days, which are unheard of in the territories. They get Muslim holidays off. They get sick days, health insurance, pension, free transportation. And because of pressure, the SodaStream moved over the Green Line, right, the 67 border, and the 600 Palestinians lost their jobs. On average, for every Palestinian that lost his job, right, for every Palestinian that worked there, 10 people were dependent on that salary. So directly, 6,000 people, 6,000 Palestinians lost their income because of the intolerance and the anti-Semites that around the world, and they weren't happy about it. And they're the biggest victims of this all. Boycotts are not good for the Palestinians or the Arabs.
Amen. I'm so glad you shared the details of that. You're a good ambassador for Israel, and the world needs to know these truths. Nosson, I'm afraid we're already out of time again. These programs go by so fast because I think I enjoy them so much. I enjoy talking to you. I hope this is the second of many if we can get together again. And I look forward
I'd love to. I had a great time.
I did too, and I
really enjoyed speaking to your viewers.
I'm glad you did. Thank you. And thank you for doing it. And I hope that one day I get to come see you in Israel face to face. And I hope it's not long. So
absolutely. And you have we'll invite you for a meal at our house. It's an open invitation.
Oh, I accept. Sounds good. Thank you. All right. Nosson, thank you for being with us. And all of you, thank you. I hope you've enjoyed this program. I hope you've heard things that maybe you didn't know and maybe you didn't understand about the situation in Israel today. And if you get a chance, you need to go. And I think Nosson would be a great tour guide if you go and hook up with him. So God bless you. Thank you. Shalom.